I don't think I've ever seen a cartoon pilot receiving this much critical praise or attention as Infinity Train. And for very good reasons. The premise is intriguing, the characters in here hold so much potential, they have their own goals and motives, it stars a female protagonist, and overall it's a very unique and different concept from what we have seen. Surely this would make a great animated series. It would definitely help benefit Cartoon Network, especially when Adventure Time and inevitably Steven Universe ends. But for every pro, there's a con. Before I go on, I feel like it would be necessary to give you guys what I'm talking about. For those who are unaware, Infinity Train is an animated pilot pitched for Cartoon Network created by Owen Dennis. The premise is about a young girl named Tulip, voiced by Ashley Johnson of all people, who has been on this train that seems to go on forever. How did she get on this train? They don't explain it, but that's not important right now. All we know is that she has been stuck on this train for about a week and is desperate of getting off and finding her way home. She also has this mysterious number glowing on her right hand ever since she got on board. Along with that, she's accompanied with 1-1, a robot who's actually two separate robots named Glad One and Sad One. The premise seems to revolve around Tulip going through each card connected through the train. This requires her to do some puzzle solving to get through each card to car, and with each card it seems to have its own bizarre world or dimension, including inhabiting life. The climax of the pilot is as well really intense and shows the possibility of how dark Infinity Train can be, which is another possible reason why this pilot has gotten so much attention. And I personally believe the attention for it is really deserved. It has so much going for it to make this a potentially awesome show. So many unique and creative ideas that brings along towards the table. I really do want Infinity Train to become its own series, or maybe even its own miniseries, but at the same time, I kind of don't. But why? Why don't I want this cool, unique concept to be greenlit? Well, it's not the pilot or the concept itself per se, it's more on the network that it was pitched to, Cartoon Network. Why Cartoon Network exactly? Don't I want them to have more potentially good shows? Don't I want them to have more shows to keep them running afloat? Oh yes, absolutely yes. But here's my problem. Cartoon Network's business practices and their decisions as a network. If I were to sum up my own feelings towards Cartoon Network in one sentence, it would be this. The best way to describe my feelings towards Cartoon Network is similar to my feelings towards Nintendo. They can make amazing products and pull out some great content, but I despise their business practices, their policies, and how they handle them. And I bet if you've been on the internet long enough, you would find out how so many people have been criticizing the network and the way they've been treating their shows almost non-existent, by giving them little to no airs or reruns whatsoever. But let's be honest here, this should be no surprise at all. Cartoon Network's schedule is and has always been absolute abysmal. This isn't new at the very slightest. The network itself has always had a long terrible history of organizing and scheduling their own content for almost about a decade or so. Remember when Johnny Test was always be constantly airing on the channel? Now in the year 2017, if you turn on to Cartoon Network right now, the probability is that they'll either be running The Amazing World of Gumball or Teen Titans Go. Mostly the latter. The chances of stumbling into Steven Universe, Adventure Time, or a regular show is almost slim to none. To give you guys a better visual idea, take a look at their most recent schedule that happened on the week of March 13th. Almost 50% of Teen Titans Go took up throughout the entire week, while Gumball takes up about 35%. Not as big as Teen Titans Go, but it's still noticeable. Which leads me to no other choice but to talk about Teen Titans Go, because God forbids I don't when you have so many others who have talked about this show to death. So yeah, let's talk about Teen Titans Go. If you've been lying under a rock, congratulations, I envy you. But seriously, if you're not aware, Teen Titans Go is currently Cartoon Network's most highest rated show. Yes, even more than Adventure Time and Steven Universe. Anyone who watches the network as of late will tell you that Cartoon Network constantly airs and shows almost non-stop episodes of this show. Now, to be perfectly clear, I do understand that there's an audience for this show. I'm fully aware that I'm not in the target demographic. This is a show that's supposed to appeal towards 7 to 12-year-old kids. However, just because it wasn't made for me or appeals to my demographic, that doesn't automatically gives it any leeway or gets off the hook for me to criticize or critique. That being said, if you like and enjoy Teen Titans Go, then good for you. I may not like it, but at the end of the day, we're all just people, and I'm not going to judge someone for liking a show that I personally don't enjoy. But let's get to the real sticky situation, or else this video will go on for way too long. So you might be asking, what does Teen Titans Go have to do with Infinity Train or anything related to this video? Well, I mentioned that it's Cartoon Network's most highest rated show, and that it almost takes up most of their schedule. And that's the problem. Cartoon Network knows that airing their most highly successful show constantly on the network will crank up the views and get a lot of money. Now, to be perfectly fair, as a financial standpoint, this would make a whole lot of sense. I mean, hey, for almost about 2 decades, it worked spectacularly for Nickelodeon with SpongeBob SquarePants. And even still, almost after 18 years of running, it's still showing on Nick to this very day. But back to Cartoon Network. My issue with them is that they'll air numerous of marathons of Teen Titans Go. Sometimes they'll run marathons of it for no reason at all. Heck, to give you an example, one time it was marathon throughout the entire Thanksgiving weekend.
But this weekend, you own the TV.
Titans Go!
Cartoon Network is showing every single Teen Titans Go episode all weekend long.
Hey, sweetie, when can we watch our show?
When Teen Titans Go is over.
Okay, no worries.
Another more recent example is what happened last February. During the week of February 13th, Teen Titans Go once again took up most of 50% of the entire weekly schedule. The other shows like Gumball, Clarence, We Bare Bears, and other programs, even some of their newest shows like Mighty Magic Sword and My Knight and Me, had very minimal airings. To make things matters worse, shows like Steven Universe or Adventure Time will only have like 1 episode throughout the week, and that's most likely because it's airing a new episode. The point I'm trying to make is that Cartoon Network's schedule might come off somewhat discouraging towards any aspiring creators. And I'm not just talking about Infinity Train, oh no. I'm also talking about the other CN pilots as well, like 12 Forever or Victor and Valentino. If any of these shows do get picked up, all I will say is good luck facing the wrath. Now, I did mention that Teen Titans Go isn't the only one that takes up the network schedule, and that it would sometimes be The Amazing World of Gumball. While it doesn't take up as much as Teen Titans Go does, it has been noticeable for having more reruns compared to the other Cartoon Network originals. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Gumball, but even I will say that there are other shows that deserve to be aired more often. Even if Steven Universe was rerun all the time, I would eventually get sick of it, because that's all what the network would just show. But it's not just Teen Titans Go or their scheduling that made me lost their trust. You see, for the past couple of years, the network has been making some awful, terrible choices. You know what I'm talking about, like canceling Young Justice, a show that was meant and geared towards an older audience, and this was all because it wasn't selling enough merchandising and toys. This happened with Symbiotic Titan as well. This is why Cartoon Network rebooted the Powerpuff Girls in 2016, because they knew it was one of their most popular IPs at the time, and that it would sell more toys thanks to the brand recognition. Why is that every time Cartoon Network wants to be anything but a Cartoon Network, a network that's designed and made for cartoons and should be only for cartoons? I mean, for crying out loud, they're still airing live action movies. Like, what in the world? So if Infinity Train does get greenlit, awesome. But at the same time, Cartoon Network. But if it doesn't get picked up, I would honestly be glad, so that it won't go through the same treatment that the previous shows have gone through. So in a way, it's kind of a win-win situation, if that's what you want to call it. But even if Cartoon Network doesn't greenlight Infinity Train, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Cartoon Network isn't the only network that provides cartoons. Look back at almost a decade ago when the pilot for Adventure Time was showcased on Nickelodeon. People loved it at the time, but Nick decided not to give the show a fair shot. And do you know what happened next? That's right, it went to and got picked up by Cartoon Network. It would be incredibly ironic if Cartoon Network doesn't pick up this show and Infinity Train would go to Nickelodeon and get greenlight there. Even if Infinity Train doesn't get picked up by the network, we still have Nickelodeon and Disney XD. Could it work on Nick? Well, that's debatable, to be honest. Now, I do believe that Nickelodeon is doing so much better than how they were from the past 5 years. A lot of people have told me that SpongeBob is doing decent again, and their most recent show, The Loud House, has been a huge hit. It's actually getting more frequent airtimes as of late, so I am assuming Nickelodeon is acknowledging the show's appeal and that there is an audience for it. That being said, even though the channel is doing alright, I heard some unpleasant and downright horror stories from the people who work barked at Nick. One example that comes to mind is when Harvey Beaks would soon be ending and the creator of the show was never foretold about it. He even went as far to go make a post on his Tumblr explaining his situation and dealing with the company. And that's the sad truth. The Loud House might have gotten lucky because it actually managed to attract more viewers than SpongeBob. You know, it's like winning a chance time on Mario Party. If your show isn't as popular as SpongeBob, it'll most likely go to Tunic and eventually canceled. But if your show does get popular like SpongeBob, it would have the risk of staying on for too long and overstaying its welcome. It happened with the Fairly Odd Parents, and I hope it doesn't happen with the Loud House. And yeah, that kinda sucks. If Infinity Train got picked up by Nick, I would be grateful, but I would also take everything with a pinch of salt. What about on Disney? More specifically, Disney XD. Disney nowadays put their animated shows on there instead of the Disney Channel, because I guess they want their main channel to have the same rehashed sitcoms over and over again, but I digress. Now, Disney XD itself has some very decent shows. Of course, there's Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and I heard that Star Wars Rebels and Milo's Murphy's Law are also very decent shows as well too. Do you know what they also have? Pokemon. Yes, Cartoon Network no longer distributes the dub for the anime and has been handed to Disney, and oh my, look at that. No longer will you have to wake up 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning to watch Pokemon. Instead, it's on around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that is the perfect time to air, especially when kids get off from school. Their schedule in general is quite honestly not that bad. I mean, there's a few shows here and there that might have a bit too much airtime, but it's not that noticeable. So if Infinity Train got picked up by Disney XD, I think people wouldn't mind too much about it. So what is with this network and greenlighting shows a second season before it runs? Do they really have that much faith in their own shows? Now, I have heard that some people would rather have Infinity Train on Adult Swim instead of Cartoon Network. While I do see where some might be coming from because Adult Swim has more possible creative freedom, the thing I have is that we don't know how adult Infinity Train can be. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, Samurai Jack got brought back and is running on Adult Swim. But here's the thing. Samurai Jack has already proved itself as a show that it could handle mature adult themes in the past, while Infinity Train is still in its infancies. We know that from the pilot that it could possibly handle dark and mature themes, but other than that, I'm sorry, putting Infinity Train on Adult Swim would be a huge gamble, and I'd rather not take that risk. But I have one more idea, and I was saving this the best for last. Not only would this be a great idea, but it might be the best out of all of them. Hear me out. What if Infinity Train was picked up by Netflix? I'm not joking. Having it on Netflix would seriously be the best possible thing ever. Because how flexible Netflix can be, you would no longer have to worry about or need to cut something out in order to hit that precise 11 or 22 minute runtime. Netflix doesn't care. You can go a little bit over that time limit just to expand on storytelling and developing characters more. There's no need to rely on the Nelson rating anymore, as Netflix has its own rating system. If a Netflix original show has a very positive and is doing very well with the viewers, they might consider granting that show a second season. No more scheduling or shows competing for prime time, none of that. Netflix is a video streaming service, and you, the viewer, has the ability and the choice to watch any show or movie as you please. And to top things off, you don't have to worry about executives or any major changes just to fit for the age demographic. Now, is every Netflix show good? No, not always. But look at shows like BoJack Horseman, Voltron Legendary Defenders, Stranger Things, a series of unfortunate events, all which I mentioned are heavily critically acclaimed by both critics and audiences. You can tell by watching these shows that the people behind it have more creative freedom and control on what they're doing. I swear, if any of these shows were on cable television, I don't think they would ever be the same as they are right now. If Cartoon Network rejects Infinity Train, then I personally believe that pitching it to Netflix would possibly be the next best thing. But those are my thoughts and opinions. I'm curious to what you guys have to say. Now, if you excuse me, I have a countdown I need to work on that's way overdue. See you guys next time.
I think I got my push.